everybody, it's Romania Black, and it's been a little while since I've read Seraph of the End. It's been about a month, actually, so I'm on Mob Psycho now, and it's been about 4 or 5 weeks, but I was told that volume 28, which is set chapters 115 and 118, chapter 118 just dropped, and so I was like, okay, the volume is complete, so we can definitely review it. I'm really excited. I'm still reading the Seraph of the End light novels. I'm on the last Gur Nishinose novel of Catastrophe at 16, and then I have 2 Resurrection at 19 novels to read, so I'm still working on those. So probably, hopefully within the next month, I'll have those novels finished up, and I'll do kind of like a review of those novels for those of you that are interested in knowing what they're about and what they cover. So, but I couldn't wait. As soon as everybody said that volume 28 was done, I was like, yeah! And the cover looks great. It's got Asheramaru, and it's got Cruel on it. It's wonderful. But yeah! So, when we last left off, it seems like so long ago, but when we last left off, Gurren kind of laid down the ultimatum that in order to bring back all of humanity, they gotta sacrifice Mika. And obviously Yu is not about that choice. And he was like, no, Mika's a part of me. And they went through all the trouble of making Mika a demon, and it's in his sword now. And Yu's like, no, I don't want to sacrifice Mika because Yu and Mika have been established as soulmates and all this. So, oh my gosh, there's just a lot going on, right? I've not gone back and reread the chapters, but I've been reading the light novels and everything, so it's been a nice little refresher of all the characters through that. But I do love this front page here that we have, chapter 115, Choices and Decisions. So yeah, everybody's going to try to restrain Yu. I'm like, why can't we have nice things, Gurren? But you know what? The novel's given a nice example of Gurren's just, the example of he just doesn't stop. So I'm very excited to see what these 4 chapters will entail, but I have a feeling it's going to go by really quickly. Maybe not, because each chapter is 46 pages long, so it may not be that short, in all honesty. But yeah, we're going to reach volume 28, and then sadly, after that, it's going to be probably another 4 or 5 months before we read volume 29, because we'll have to go through chapters 119, 120, 121, and 122. But I'm curious to see what all is in this volume, because the story has really picked up. I've said it in the previous reactions for the previous volumes. I feel like the story was just getting really good, and then I caught up, and I was like, And so now I've been patiently waiting for volume 28 to come out, but I'm really excited. So let's not waste any more time, shall we? We are going to dive into volume 28 of Seraph of the End. So excited. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. These chapters went by insanely fast. Insanely fast. It was 4 months worth of chapters in 20 minutes of reading. I was like, are you joking? Because this volume was just from start to finish, just a bunch of action. Oh, and then of course we get Asheramaru. Asheramaru being surprisingly, the demon being surprisingly sympathetic in all of this. And I wasn't going to bring White Borkun out at first, but then I was like, we need to talk about all of this and all this going forward. But Mika and Yu just being like, no, screw it. I'm not following anybody's plans. I'm not doing anything by anybody's standards. There's a part of me that it's so ballsy of the mangaka to be like, no, we're going to have Yu just be his own person and do his own thing and say, screw it, and not follow along suit with anybody else. Right, and I think that does separate him from Gurren in a way, and we'll talk about that. But I'm noticing in the color spread here that Noya is also included in that group, so that's a fun time. But yeah, Yu just being and everybody going after Yu, because the situation is that we have 2 different things being proposed here. Gurren's proposal, I'm going to put this on here, is that they sacrifice Mika and all of the vampires in exchange for humanity to be brought back. Those that died from the plague. We're going to bring them back, and in exchange we're going to sacrifice all the vampires and Shikamadoji. That's going to be the thing. And the thing about it is, the vampires, or in this case, I mean, Cruel just wants to be with her brother. But Farad is totally on board with this because he wants to die. Crowley's like, I guess I'll die too. But they're seemingly all about this. And so, but the thing about Gurren in the light novels that I will add to this is that Gurren has always acknowledged that he's weak. Gurren has always acknowledged that he's not strong and has relied and followed others. He's always had his own plan, kind of like you, but he has relied and followed others throughout this. And so Gurren's plan is that he knows he wants to bring back everyone, and that includes Shinya and the others that have died, and they're only going to be back for a limited amount of time. So, and I want to make note in here that Farad and Cruel are okay with this. Because Cruel knows that she'll be reunited with her brother through all this, right? We'll talk about this with the chapters. But Yu is not about that life. Yu, oh my God, Yu loves Mika. He loves Mika to the point where he will literally sacrifice everybody to save him. But here's the thing about it, right? So Yu is like, no, he's like, I love Mika, and he wants to bring back Mika. Now, and he wants to bring him back to being human. And so Yu's just like, no, I want to bring Mika back. Now, in Yu's defense, I think it's a little taboo and weird that you want to bring back humanity from the dead and sacrifice all the vampires. It's like part of me is like, Gurren, this whole thing went bad the first time you did it. Will it go bad the second time, right? And then Mika's like, just stop this. He's like, you're swamped in ugly desires. I can't eat those. Quit trying to run away and think. Who is it you're facing right now? Who are you pointing your sword at? And it's the craziest thing because Mika is like, I like that Mika at this point, he wants to die. He has all this self-hatred. He has all this self-hatred and guilt for seemingly causing Ayami and them to die, that he wants to die. He's like, no, I've already died. Don't bring me back. Save the others, that it's my fault that they died. And it's so funny to see Mika being like, back when Mika was alive and human, he didn't like Yu's friends. He thought they were taking Yu from him. But now he's like, look, I'm already dead. He's like, and Mika's like, Yu's like, I want to bring you back. And Mika's like, well, you can't have everything. And he's like, well, neither can they. So it's such a hard thing. He's like, the numbers are too different, me versus all of humanity. And Yu's like, I don't care about humanity. And he's like, okay, so does that mean we're abandoning everybody? We're abandoning all the kids that died? If you bring me back, we're going to give everybody help. He's like, you won't be able to live that. And you live with that. And Yu's just like, but he doesn't want to lose Mika. And it's so damn sad. It's just like, he's like, Gurren had to make a lot of hard, ugly choices. He's like, and now it's your turn to make a hard and ugly choice. And the thing of it is, Yu does make a hard, ugly choice. And the hard choice is he abandons his family for the person he loves. And it's like, shit. It's kind of, I don't want to spoil Attack on Titan if you've not watched Attack on Titan, but there's a very similar argument between saving the lives of the many and the lives of the few. And the main character chooses the lives of the few. And it's like, shit. So Yu kind of goes along this same path, right? But the funny thing is that Yu is so adamant about how much he loves Mika, and Mika's just like, it's not worth it. He's like, I can't give up on you. And Mika tries to convince him, he's like, that you can make this choice. And Mika says that back when I was alive, I thought that as long as I had family, no, as long as I had you, I could do anything. But I failed, and it was my fault. He's like, living after that, it hurts too much. And so he wants you to kill him. So Mika, they basically confess that they love each other. It's like, what? It's canon, damn it. That Mika's like, he loves you, but living with the guilt is too much. So for Mika, it's not really for the others that he wants to die. It's also for himself, like to make himself feel better. right? And he's like, living hurt and it was my fault. They died, but I survived. He's like, I want you to save my heart. So let's bring the others back. And it's the craziest thing, right? That you get why Yu is like, no, I love you. And I don't want to have to choose between the two. And it's also the weirdest thing that his decision is kind of what the antagonist wants too. So it's still the weirdest thing. He's like, it's not fair. And then he's like, well, it's fine. He's like, everyone dies eventually and then we'll get to be together in heaven. And Yu's like, well, where's heaven? He's like, well, I'm not sure, but we'll find out, right? He's like, let's make the right choice and save our family together. And he's like, it'll be okay. It'll all be fine. We'll be together forever. But in that moment, Yu's like, I finally got you. I have you here with me. He's like, I don't want to lose you again, because he's like, what if that's not true? What if I don't see you ever again? And then the fact that he gets this resolve that Yu's like, nope. He's like, I'll choose. The moment he said I'll choose, I was like, oh no, he's going to pick the other thing, right? He's not going to pick saving his friends, right? And he doesn't. He decides to use Mika. And he's like, nope. He's like, I made my decision and I'm going to go. He's like, I made my decision and I want to save Mika. It's like, and everybody's like, you're not being yourself. And I'm like, well, but Yu does love Mika. That's like Yu's whole it's like Yu was made to love Mika. And that's kind of the scary thing about it, is that his whole purpose in life has been to be with Mika. And Mika tries to get him out of that, but he's like, no. He's like, I know how I feel and I love him. And so he fights everybody in this, and Cruel's like, enough of that. And then Gurren's trying to get him to stop, so that he's like, this won't work. And then he comes to the conclusion that he would get Asheramaru. And so put Asheramaru up here. Ashera. And so Yu wants to use him. He decides, oh, well, I'll just use his power along with Mika's. And I love that Asheramaru like has a moment in this volume where he just is like, no, you really don't know what you're getting into, right? And so again, I do love Cruel's like shark shirt. I want that hoodie so badly. But yeah, Asheramaru's like, it's such a weird thing, because at the start of this series, Azure was like, I'll give you all this power. Come on, get all this power from me. And now the tables have turned where he's like, no. He's like, I don't want to give you power anymore because it's not going to help me get my sister back. Yeah, before he thought he was doing it to help get Cruel, and now he's like, no, he's like, mm-mm. And then, yeah, at this point, Yu's just got like the demon eyes, and he's asking him for more and more power. And he starts to see Cruel, and he's like, I know my sister's here. And so he questions, he basically, the first, told him that he would save Cruel if he helped. Right? And so that's the reason why Asheramaru became a demon. It's the reason he became a vampire. It's the reason that all of this happened, is like just because the first was like, no, you can save your sister if you help me. And man, the action in this entire volume where Cruel was just, where Azure just like ripped the eye out of that guy. He chopped a guy's head off. He was merciless and was just wanting to know where his sister was. And that shot, oh my God, when he goes into the house and sees her like strung up. Oh my God, that was just absolutely awful. Ugh. That was a pretty brutal scene, I'm not gonna lie. I was not expecting that in this volume whatsoever. But yeah, he manages to get Cruel out of there, and she's like, they like cut her eyes and everything. And so he's like, oh, I'll give you my blood and turn you into a vampire, but he doesn't know how exactly to do it. And so Cruel was going to die in peace. But he brought her back. Which brings up a good point in all of this, right? Because this story gets so interesting in the idea and the concept of bringing people back from the dead, and like if it's the right thing to do or not. And And that's kind of the insane thing about it. So, because in a lot of the cases, well, I'm going to get to the end of this chapter, was that he ends up seeing Shikamadoji, who shows up like an angel to save his sister. And Shikamadoji tries to talk him out of it. He's like, no, he's like, I could bring her back, but if I do, she'll never be able to die again. And I like that Shikamadoji establishes that he's like, immortality is torture. A hell that's far worse and lasts longer than anything any slave would suffer. He's like, are you okay with that? Like, if I bring her back, it's permanent. Is that all right? He's like, this is worse than death. Do you want that? And he makes the selfish decision to ask for his sister back. He's like, your sister's dying in peace. Do you want her back so badly that you'll pull her into hell? I'm like, oh my gosh. Because the thing of it is, it's this weird dynamic, right? Is that Gurren wants to bring humanity back, right? But there's this question too about immortality. About immortality and the idea of that resurrection, right? That is that a good thing or not? Because Shikamadoji acknowledges no, and Farrah has acknowledged no, immortality is a bad thing. And by the end of this, in the present timeline, Cruel and Azure are ready to go. They've been around for like a millennium. They're like, we're done, right? So it begs the question, like, Shikamadoji says, like, do you really want to bring your sister back even though she'll suffer? So it's like, it's this point of Azure makes a selfish decision and says, no, I want my sister to come back for me. All of the people Gurren are with, they want to bring humanity back. But in the reality, how they're bringing humanity back, it's kind of selfish too, because it's not just, it's not just them saying, oh, we want to bring humanity back. It's like they want to bring their families back. And so there's a selfish decision there. And then Yu has a selfish decision that he wants to bring Mika back. And Mika's like, I just want to go. Like, I want to stay with you forever, but I'm dead. So what do I do? So all three parties are wanting to bring people back for their own selfish reasons, right? And it's like, what do we do? And then he brings Cruel back and she instantly suffers. And he says, I cursed my sister by bringing her back. And so then, the idea of monsters and demons. And then, it shows them like in the past, and Cruel seems like everything's okay, but it seems like Azure is like debating on whether this was a good thing or not, that they were brought back. And then Gurren's like, he's trying to devour Asheramaru, and Cruel tries to get Yu to stop. And so then Yu does say, he's like, I'll save everyone. He's like, oh no, Azure's like, you only want to save Mikaela. Like, it's the demon like talking back and forth. On the one hand, Mika wants to save everyone. And Yu wants to save Mikaela. But by the end of this, Yu seems to have a plan, which is scary. Yu having a plan is very scary, right? And so Yu's like, no, I'll save everyone. And so unless Yu's like trying to find a way to save everyone without losing Mika, which could very well be it. We don't know. Yu has something in mind because it seems like he's got something on his brain. And then Asheramaru is like, you peeked inside my heart and sees that I want to save my sister. No. And so Yu is saying that he's like, no, you'll save. When Yu says he's going to save everybody, Azure is like, no, I've seen from the beginning, you've only ever had eyes for Mikaela. And then Yu corrects him and says, Mika. And he's like, I won't let you devour me. Yeah, I was like, I love how at this point in the series, it's pretty much canon that everyone knows that Yu and Mika are like a thing. And he's like, let me devour you and I'll grant your wish. And so Azure is like, what do I do? And then we cut back to the first, and the first is just like, yep. He's like, everything's going to plan. And meanwhile, Rigger is like, you're pinned and helpless with no hope for victory. He's like, what's so amusing? And we established in the light novel, I want to point out, Rigger, even though I don't know how he's changed his hair, his eyes have changed because he has contacts in. That's how that's changed. Now his ears, don't know. And then Shikamadoji says, your usefulness to me is over. Everything's as it ought to. Let him devour you. And Azure's like, are you kidding me? He's like, you're just going to discard me after using me for all this time and throwing me away? It's exactly the same thing that Rigger had. Rigger had the same thing happen where he lost total faith in Shikamadoji altogether because he was like, no, hell no. He's like, damned angels of all the disrespect. So Shikamadoji's basically an angel that's also a vampire. Fun times. But yeah, he's like, I have to hurry. And that's when Asheramaru hears his sister and decides to fight Yu. Yeah. He's like, I failed so often since the day I cursed my sister. I have to make up for those failures. And I'll kill you if I must, and Michaela inside of you. And so I feel like Asheramaru has a lot in common with Gurren in this moment because it talks about how they view themselves as failures and they say that they constantly have to do things to help one another and to get back from the failures they've had. Yu, the funny thing is in all of this, Yu does not have a failure mentality. He really doesn't. He's just like, Yu doesn't think he's failed. He's so driven by his conviction that it's kind of crazy, right? And he's like, I'll save her. And he's like, and Azura's like, you go off and save Michaela. Do what you gotta do. But I'm gonna focus on my sister. You leave me out of this, right? And so then they fight over and over again. And it gets to the point where Asheramaru is like, yeah, no, Mika's not healing you because Mika wants you to lose. It's like, no, the first is still manipulating you. Michaela wants to die. When their time comes, humans are supposed to die. There's still time if you act now. You don't make the same mistake that I did. And so Asheramaru is trying to say, don't be like me. Don't try to bring someone back that needs to move on. He's like, everyone needs to move on. Just let it go. Now the problem is, you could also look at that and say, well, then they shouldn't bring any of them back either because they should move on. You should just focus on what you have now and don't worry about bringing people back from the dead. I mean, if you're going to play devil's advocate, that's the thing. But Ashura, all he knows is that Yu wants to bring Mika back. And he's like, no, he's like, just let it go. He's like, Cruel ended up hating her existence and wants to die. Mika wants to die now. Just let it go. But Yu is a lot like him. And he says, no, you were right not to give up on your sister. That's how humanity should be. And I'm not going to give up on Michaela. And that smile that Azura gives him, he's like, you're going to be stuck in that loop forever. And he's like, I won't give up until I die. And they're both like, okay. So yeah, at that point where Yu is like, no, part of humanity is not giving up. He's like, Mika has all this self-hatred. He's like, I'm not going to let him go on without knowing how much I love him. And it's like, oh, he knows. But that smile and everything, God, that's so good. It's just like, oh my gosh. And then, they just go after one another. And then we get to chapter 118. These chapters went by so fast. And the thing that sucks is that the new chapter's coming out tomorrow. I'm going to wait till January. I hate it. I hate it. So So anyway, I hear voices. So everyone's telling them to hang in there. And they're like, aren't we your family too? And Gurren's like, this isn't who you are. And it's like, well, it kind of is. But the sword going through Yu's eye, everything. Like them just duking it out. And so and the point where Azure is like, you're becoming a monster that everyone hates that doesn't deserve to live. I was like, you are one to talk, Azure. But they're all trying to get him to back down. And he's like, remember what they said before. What did everyone used to call you? And he's like, they called me a devil. And he's like, after that, the only thought that crossed my mind was that my life had no value. And he's like, I'm alone and I'll always be alone. And that's when Shikamadoji showed up and let him meet Mika. So Azura is saying that they're all fake memories. They're manipulated emotions. Open your ears and listen. Can't you hear your real family? And it's all of them like talking to him. So, but here's the complicated thing about it is that, it is true that Yu is manipulated. He is manipulated, by the first to think that Mika is his only love. Right? But in the same regard, Mika has always, but back in the flashbacks, Yu was talking to Mika and was listening to him and could hear things even Shikamadoji couldn't hear. So there is an element of his love for Mika that is genuine and pure and real, right? But Ashura is saying that Yu's real family, his real family is the one he made himself. And the thing of it is, both are true. I feel like, yeah, Shinoa and Shinoa and oh my god, Kimizuki and all them, they are his family, but so is Mika. So it's like he has both, right? And they're trying to get him to come back from the brink. And Gurren's like, well, no, just keep talking to him. And so there is, like, they're both like, so there is a little bit of manipulation there too on Gurren's part, because Gurren's like, no, keep talking to him, like get him to calm down, right? So, and then, yeah, they're all saying that, like, we're all your family, we need to talk. I do agree they should have talked this over before jumping to conclusions, before attacking Yu. They should have kind of talked this over before jumping Yu and trying to subdue him. That would have been the smart thing to do, but here we are. And so, yeah, but there is a little manipulation there, even if it's genuine friendship, that Gurren's being like, no, we need to calm him down to get him back to his senses, right? And because they need Mika to do the sacrifice. And then Shinoa, I love that Kimizuki's like, we're family, you said it, my sister, we're all family, so quit this crap and come back to your senses. And Shinoa, the one part about this chapter I didn't like is this, and again, I've said this in the previous reactions, the one part of it I didn't like was Shinoa saying, I can't go on living without you. And I was like, okay, like Shinoa likes you. She does. We've established this. But I feel like her saying she can't go on living without him, like, I don't feel like her love is as deep as Yu and Mika's. I feel like she's saying that to get to him. It may have been genuine, but... And Farad's over there smiling, like, Crowley's just like, oh, this drama. And Farad's just like, yeah, isn't this fun? And so then Ashura's like, come on, stop this. You aren't alone anymore. If you can't hear their voices, then you really are a monster. A puppet that Shikamadoji made to dance to his tune. And just, yeah, you crying and everything. It's like, yeah, he knows that they're his family. But he also knows that so is Mika and he can't give up on them. So it's like, he's like, all of them, they're there for me. And I'm not alone anymore. He's like, yeah. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry. He's like, I've been saying this whole time. So he's like, no, he's like, I've been saying this whole time, trying to figure everything out. And that's when he goes like after you and absorbs Asheramaru. And he's like, cruel, I'm sorry. And then he's like, I won, I beat him. And he's like, winning is kind of empty. And so he goes to Mika, and Mika's not happy. I love that Mika's been mad this whole time. Like, really? I asked you not to do these things, and you're doing them, Mika. You're doing them, Yu. So yeah, Yu manages to absorb. Now he has 2 demons. Okay. And so he's like, oh, did you eat? You look pissed. Are you mad at me? And he's like, yes, I've been mad this whole time. And Yu's back to his normal self. He's like, are you going to betray everyone and bring me back to life, even though that's not what I want? And Yu's like, no. He's like, are you going to blindly trundle along doing everything Shikamadoji tells you? And he's like, no. And I do like our boy Yu for this. That he's like, I'm going to do my own thing. I'm not going to do what Gurren says, and I'm not going to do what Shikamadoji says. I'm going to do what I say. And Mika's like, okay, well then what is that? What is that path that you are going to take? How is that different? What's different about it, right? Because Yu is like, I like that he's like, I'm not going to be manipulated by Gurren anymore. And that's a big step for you. Because leading up to this volume, Yu has told me, he's like, oh, we'll just trust Gurren. We'll just do whatever Gurren says. Gurren knows what's best. It's fine. And now he's like, no. He's like, that wasn't right. I'm not going to do what Gurren says. But he's also like, no, I get what Azure is getting at. The Shikamadoji is using me. I'm not about that life either. I'm going to save you because it's what I want to do. and I'm going to do what I can to make sure that happens. And he's like, I do. He's like, I only want one thing, and that's to protect my family from this stupid world, this craptacular world. Can you help me with it, okay? So Yu has a plan. He has a plan. We don't exactly know what it is, but his plan is to protect his family. And we assume now, as Ashura told him, because he said he was sane through all that, that he knows that his family is not just Mika, but everyone else too. So, and I love that he's like, oh, I'm sorry, Shanoa. And she's like, what? And she's like, don't you dare say it. And he's like, I'm leaving. He's like, I gotta go. He's like, I'm not. And then, of course, Gurren's like, no. And then he leaves. He's like, I'm not being a part of anybody's plans. I'm going to do my own thing. So the question is, what is he going to do? What's his plan? How does this work? I mean, I admire you for sticking to his guns. And if you're a Yu and Mika fan, it's like, good for you. But it's also like, damn. Like, you can see both sides of it. And this story is really good at presenting you with all these different sides to look at. But it's like, what do we do? I don't know. So, I'm really excited, though. I'm very excited to see what's going to happen in the next volume. I just am really sad now that we have to wait months for it. I'm really sad. And I'm not going to do chapter by chapter because y'all saw how fast these chapters went. I'd be done in like 5 minutes. No, I'm not doing that. It's going to be hard, but you know what? If chapter 119 comes out in October, you have 119, 120 in November, 121 in December, 121 in January. You know what? January, there's nothing going on except January Yowie. So January will be a great month. It'll be after Christmas. Be a nice little post-holiday thing. Get that all wrapped up. Yeah, just have a nice start to 2023 with volume 29 of Seraph at the end. That sounds good. But in the meantime, I am still working on the novels. I am still working on the light novels. So there will be at least another Seraph at the End video come out at least sometime this fall. When I get the light novels read, then I'll go through and do a summary of all those and post them on here. So there's still going to be a light novel, Seraph of the End goodness, talking about Gurren Ichinose. What a character. What a card Gurren is. I'm curious to see how he reacts to all this. Yikes. But yeah, I'm really curious. So, we'll see though, right? I'm very curious to know your thoughts below about this volume. This volume is pretty crazy, but I'm pretty excited to hear what y'all had to say about it. So, in the meantime, I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back in 2023. Well, I'll be back before then. I'll be back in 2023 with volume 29 of Seraph of the End, but I'll be back before then talking about the Gurren Ichinose novels for Seraph of the End, and I'll see you all then. Bye.